No, we got a lot to talk about. So I think
All
we're good.
right, man, we're ready to go. Again, this is the Ficklin Media in conversation with Donald McAulay Jr. Donald McAulay Jr. You know, by the way, Don, I'm a junior as well, and although my father passed away in 1967, I always like to kind of remember him, and so I'll sometimes even still put Junior. In your case, your father is still alive, so I spoke to your father actually yesterday on a different matter pertaining to your sisters in terms of their Black Lives Matter activism. So
Yeah, I
activism,
saw it. That was an excellent piece. That was an excellent
yes,
piece.
so activism seems to be in the family, and I'm really glad to see that. I have you commented on my hat, and yeah, it is June time and Juneteenth time for that matter. But this is my El Hajj Malik El Shabazz hat, and I wanted to start off with his legacy and his presence even today, because some people might know him as Malcolm Little, others might know him as Detroit Red, others might know him as Malcolm X. But I always like to remind people that on the tombstone it's El Hajj Malik El Shabazz. So on your tombstone, if you have Betty made that choice, his wife, but that's the name that we should remember him as. You know, she could have put Detroit Red there, she could have put Malcolm Little there, she could have put Malcolm X, but he chose to put, and he changed it, El Hajj Malik El Shabazz. So there was recently a film that's available. I think it still is on Prime, Amazon, or on HBO, or
Netflix.
on
It's on
Netflix.
Netflix.
And I urge people to take a look at in terms of who killed Malcolm X, because we may never know, and whether the society was complicit, whether black Muslims were complicit, whether the New York Police Department, whether the Newark Police Department, whether the Newark Mosque, just whether we in general as a society should in my mind, Donald, take some responsibility for the death of our so-called martyrs. And I say so-called because George Floyd is a martyr, and other folks, MLK, et cetera. But you had some thoughts about the actual, how do we legally determine who the film represent accurately the true murderers, who had their fingers on the gun.
So I have mixed reviews. So my mixed reviews is that in this time right now, obviously focusing on the nation and their influence in Newark's mosque and their contributions to the work. It was difficult. It was difficult to really process that the orchestration of his demise became very petty. Petty was probably the best word. That they felt like he was growing too far. He was challenging different messages. He had reached out to Kennedy and made comments about the chickens coming home to roost. And it was an accurate statement, I think, in that climate of time, that individuals really didn't want to have that kind of political discourse from a strong Black opinion, but also a strong Black opinion that was not just, when we say militarized, they had community forces and they were armed. So most of the individuals are come off of the GI Bill. So recognizing that they had tactical knowledge to be able to support themselves and protect their communities. And that was a scary idea. And I think that to this day, that is still one of the scariest ideas, that Black society will find ways of tapping into their war ancestors or their war society, and being able to protect themselves from local tyranny.
Indeed. And I was chatting with Maurice Williams, a good friend, and he reminded me that he always brings up the, just as you were talking, Donald, the Deacons of Self-Defense, which we also forget, was a group of guys in the South. And then we also, that protected civil rights workers. And we don't forget, but we see the image, but I don't think really kind of give the proper homage to, we had the Black Panthers standing on the steps of the California State Capitol, with their guns, and then you had gun laws to kind of, in terms of the impact of open carry. So every attempt we've made it seems to defend ourselves, we've been there's been a blowback. Not to mention the Tulsa situation, not to mention Fred Hampton, et cetera. And as we talked even today, you heard about our good the one, I call him 145th, going out to Tulsa to kind of relaunch his campaign, whether it's ironic or
Dog whistling.
Pardon?
It's dog whistling.
Yeah, or whether it's just a clear signal, a wolf whistling straight to his. And we know about when the Republican Party, when Nixon went down south to Mississippi to kind of launch his campaign. So this is a very interesting time. So I'm really glad you had a chance to share with me your presence for the next 45 or so minutes. In terms of protest and activism and involvement, you're involved with an event this Saturday that is being spearheaded by Reverend Kelsey Steele at Barrack AME Zion Church. And I want to just take a minute and mention that we really want to kind of keep in mind AME Zion, African Methodist Episcopal Zion. How did those names kind of come around? And that this church here in New Haven, Barrack AME Zion Church, 1819. There were enough people here in New Haven to kind of launch a church and claim that name. And then if you really want to get in terms of our history, ask yourself what the difference is between African Methodist Episcopal Zion and African Methodist Episcopal.
Definitely.
You spent some time at the AME church, I believe, where your family kind of grew up, had some time there. And then right across town here, we have the AME Zion. So we've been involved with a lot of ways of defining ourselves from an identity standpoint, from a religious standpoint. And I want you to kind of share a little bit about your involvement this coming Saturday, because I believe you put up on Facebook, you were questioning whether churches were, what is a church mission? Is it a liberation mission, or is it a pacification or psychological substance mission? And just as before I let you speak, I just want to mention that for me, if anybody wants to talk about Christian religion, I always ask them, if you haven't read James Cone's Black Liberation Theology book, read it, and then we can talk about Christianity. I'm not trying to give a person a homework assignment, but I always kind of start with that. That's my basis of understanding Christianity. And if you disagree with what James Cone and Black Liberation Theology is all about, then we might have to just agree to disagree. If you want to talk about it in more detail about why I believe in it so much, I'm not trying to persuade you, but why James Cone, rest his soul, he just passed away recently, a year or so ago. But yeah, for me, Christ was a revolutionary, and James Cone really brings it home. But you're involved with an event on Sunday, and if you could just share a little bit about that. I'm going to switch hats.
So Pastor Steele says, I did make a comment, and you were so fortunate to see it and read it. You put me in contact with Pastor Steele, and my question really was about just the historical reference of using the church as a meeting ground to have conversations about strategy, about prayer, about healing. And Pastor Steele's was in the process of establishing a march. And he so graciously allowed me to participate in the protest, asked me to say a few words, and also lead the march this Sunday as we lead from Barrack Church. I have mixed reviews. So what my opinion is, and my personal opinion is, and what this experience is for myself as a father, as a Black man, as a Black scholar, as a New Haven resident, as a person that's interacted with the police officers, good and bad, recognizing that there is frustrations. There is frustrations, and it's this idea of wanting and hope. So in the protest this week, I guess I haven't spoke to my spiritual colleagues in that way of, from when people talk about peaceful protest, they think a lot about passive understanding, and then more so about hoping and expectations. And that's not really my viewpoint. And I can concur with some of the people of my age that we pray to give us strength as we are doing the hard work, and not kind of asking for things to happen later. So the simple way of kind of saying that is that I'm not here to pander or ask for permission or ask for racial understanding. We're saying that this is just an obvious thing happening, that the fact of the matter is this is here. We're no longer trying to substantiate our position in society. More so that we have to kind of apply more pressure in establishing what our fundamental position it should be, and the human rights that we should have and we shouldn't have to fight for. And so we started this kind of conversation on like martyrdom. And the unfortunate thing is that the giant shoulders that we're trying to stand on, we have caskets next to them, and we are not standing on those caskets. We are actually marking ourselves and figuring out where our graves are. And that's the obvious truth that I feel like it's happening. I don't live in fear, but I do know that there are times that I have to comport myself in certain ways so I never seem to be a threat. And that's a very stifling way of living.
So um, let's drill down a little bit more on that, because that's really profound, and for you to share that so openly, I really appreciate it. It's Sunday, I think it leaves at 12 from Barry, around Dixwell and Charles Street, then the march down to the Green. So if you can't get to the church, certainly kind of be at the Green and kind of enjoy and participate in that experience. But given what you've said, why have you decided to invest your energies on Sunday? You could be exercising, you could be being with your sons or daughters, or whatever the case might be, your family. Why is the importance of the march? And are you looking at the protest to be in isolation, or just a psychological catharsis? Or what's the reason that it's important for you to participate?
I think opportunities don't come a lot, and how we involve ourselves. So sometimes people want to be present for the moment. So I was at the March on Washington, the most recent one, or the Million Man March on Washington with the nation. And so sometimes we just want to be a part of it, so that when our children ask us in time of when history came, what did you do?
Mm-hmm.
I think for me in this moment, that the opportunity kind of divinely presented itself, because I just was responding on what my feelings were, specifically about what was happening. I was trying to plan, and the opportunity came. And sometimes we have to kind of be open to when things happen. No one's ever reached out to me and said, I need you to come speak at this protest and kind of be the face. And I don't think that's what they're doing. I think that I made a statement. I made a statement that you caught, and that statement sparked other conversations, and it started dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the work's not done. Um, so any protest, any individuals that are out there now, something moved them to wake up and decide to be active that day.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that this moment was a moment where that kind of the same thing happened for me,
Mm-hmm.
because we think about protests in terms of factions. Or I at least think about it in terms of factions, that there are people that are protesting. There's active resistance in education. There's active resistance in upper administration in terms of what we want business practices look like, and diversity and inclusion. So whatever our active resistance is, I think I just was kind of thrust into a moment to really do what I do in kind of the conference settings. Like as a PhD student, as a conference setting, we present our work. We present our body of work to kind of not be more so substantiated. But what I've recognized in a lot of those spaces is that your speech is motivational, your speech is encouraging. And so this kind of presented the time as an opportunity to say, this is what's happening with the kids. I've been working with this youth population. The research work is still that. But also I feel very pushed and moved. You asked me about sleep a couple of weeks ago, that my sleep was telling me that something's coming for you to say something a little different than you've normally said it before. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. I don't know if this was the moment, but it happened in a very organic way that I wasn't looking for that. But being able to go to the protest, see the energy, and see the supporters, and see what's been happening in the community already, I think that it's always been something that's been on my heart. And I was in Selma in Alabama, and when the moment comes and you're sitting on the bridge, or you're sitting on the Green, and you see and talk and hear the energy and conversations and the historical history that some people either have that you don't have, it produces new ideas that allow us to kind of fortify ourselves in the work that we do, but also push forward. And it always is about the collective. Me sitting in the house talking to myself mean nothing.
uh, thanks for sharing that. Just For those folks that did not see your brief comment, but it was a very powerful comment on Facebook, guess what was it again?
I don't have it verbatim, but I said that what churches are available to organize action? What
Indeed.
what churches in New Haven are there to organize action?
And at the point that you made that you were unaware, it's fair to say of that Reverend Steele and others might have been planning this event that's taking place on Saturday on Sunday.
No, and I think that was I said the essence of what I was looking for in action, and action being outside. I think it's difficult. I'll say this about the protest. It's difficult for people to have dialogue and discourse in the middle of a protest.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier for people to sit down in the pews or sit down in any community center to have conversations about what resolutions and what tangibles you're asking for. So originally that's what I was looking for. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know that he had planned to do this kind of movement, but I have seen this kind of movement happening throughout the city, throughout New Hampton, throughout West Haven, throughout the state, globally, internationally. We see those things, and so then it is about the tangibles. Like the protest is one thing, but what happens after that? What happens
Mm-hmm.
after the emotion leave that space and we go home to think about what are we strategically going to do to create an impact about fundamentally this issue about not just police training, but this idea of systemic racism.
Mm-hmm. Well, elaborate a little bit. So let's say it's next Monday. You participated on the green. You've indulged in the communion. I'm not being sarcastic, but you've indulged in the communion and the power of our essence and felt everyone's spirits. What are some of the things that you envisage? Your visioning and your dreaming and your mental expectations about how you might be further involved with church, really implementing the church's Black liberation strategy.
Um, to speaking honestly, like every church has a mission. They have a pastor. They have a guiding spiritual leader that has an idea of how to tackle this idea of systemic racism. If that's the conversation, some are having conversations about police training,
Mm-hmm.
which I still believe that it's still intertwined about. Let's think about the broader issues that produce the moments that we have. So what I'm looking to see from individuals after the protest is that we are trying to have conversations about how do we address systemic racism.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's only a few avenues to address systemic racism. Dr. Derek Bell addresses it well. He talks a lot about interest convergence. But the fact that we need interest convergence is the problem. That my interests have to converge before someone else provides generosity and humanity to individuals. So Dr. Derek Bell's work is a critical race theory, and one of the tenets is interest convergence. And so when white allies meet me at my interest, because it also fits the interest that benefits them, and that is kind of this moment that I feel where I see police officers taking a knee. So you know me well from the sport community, and to see this kind of, I don't think it's coincidence. I don't know, but for Greg Floyd to die under a knee, um, and then police officers take a knee, and then this becomes a sign of civility, solidarity. When Kyle Kaepernick 4 years ago took a knee, and it was a anti-patriotic act
Mm-hmm.
that swept across the world, and it was, and I understand that the NFL's mental mind is 9/11 Kyle Kaepernick. There's no moments in between, and so the patriotism that they built up from the 9/11 was also challenged by Kyle Kaepernick taking a knee at that time to really protest police brutality and humanity for Black people, where you have a league that's 75% African American. And then we see officers, interest convergence, this same symbolic expression is now one used in the killing and now used as a peaceful engagement to stop protesters from one entering the police station or something of that matter. But I take it as pandering, because the idea is that my Afrocentric understanding is that we are all relational we're relational in our cultural difference. And so in us trying to establish relationship, when we see empathy, we are more gravitating to these ideas of empathy, which do not address the long-term ramifications or long-term solutions that we can have. So it's the concept of hope, that you have hope in these individuals and your allies will someday arrive at this point. But this is the same fight that many of our grandfathers and grandfathers have had conversations about this.
So are you suggesting that the commissioner for the NFL, Goodell, his apologia was inauthentic, just exploiting the moment, or one of integrity?
I mean, racial understand. So we believe that white society does not understand race. And so in them not understanding race and their gestures and the microaggressions, he didn't understand. And so where his heart is, I can understand that he may have felt like this was a moment, but how it connects to our social political history, that it's probably not the most appropriate gesture, but we do understand this kind of kneeling as a what the movies have as the kneeling as to surrender. And Kaepernick's expression wasn't a moment of surrendering, but I think that the solidarity that the police officers is a expression of surrendering. But you have to compare that in totality, where what the police force job is, but also where you have police unions in New York that say, listen, you guys need to give us more respect. And I'm saying that you need to give us the fear that you had before, because right now we don't have the same fear for us that you used to have. So I think that's kind of murky ground, because it gets into symbolism more than it gets to the actual expression of what this individual idea is, and also what his colleagues' idea is, because these are commanders in chief. So if I'm taking a knee and they all do the same thing, I'm not here to believe that the institutional idea is that this is a surrendering of police officers to police brutality and Black humanity.
So, and I appreciate you sharing that. When the NFL commissioner Roger Goodell apologized for his being opposed to Colin Kaepernick, what was your initial reaction to that?
I have an educator that told me years ago. She said when you make a mistake, or you make a decision that you didn't ask to do something or of that sort, you make the decision, you ask forgiveness later. So his stuff is more it's more about this is foresight, because he would have to apologize technically. So how we say divine intervention, had this death not happening and the death not happening right now, he would have not apologized, because right now that moment came back of the kneeling, that this position of police brutality became another issue. And so his stance on that and his position on whatever his stakeholders were now, I'm apologizing because I didn't really understand what he was doing. Mm-hmm. And that is what I think we call hermeneutic injustice of language and values. Colin Kaepernick's values at that time were not appreciated until they were somehow introduced to this new death that then substantiates his understanding. And again, there's parts of this that, had the prosecutors and the district attorneys arrested individuals immediately, mm-hmm. this may not have been as large of an issue.
Right.
Because there wasn't a response, an immediate response. There was we're not going to rush to judgment that produced a lot of the community unrest.
That's right.
But that had already been situated and fueled. This was just kind of like the match to the fire.
Indeed. Do me a favor and just adjust your camera a little bit so that I want to see the top of your head as well. And
okay.
Yeah, that's good.
You want to see my hair?
Well, yeah. And have you gone to the barbershop yet?
Once I have
You went on Friday?
Last Friday.
So as an aside, you wore the mask. Did the barber wear the mask?
I didn't wear a mask.
Did he?
Barbara wore a mask.
Okay, the barber wore a mask. Okay, right. Let's linger. Let's stay on this point of respectability politics, because it seems to me that we've been trying to deal with respectability politics for, as you say, in some ways, since we got off the boat. So as you were talking for the last 4 or 5 minutes, it seems to me that you were kind of going back and you're giving a good paradigm for what does respectability politics mean. Is it successful? Who are you trying to garner respect from? Do you need to garner respect from yourself first? So just elaborate a little bit more on what I have categorized as you were just talking about, and tell me if you think I'm right when I use the term respectability politics.
So my understanding about respectability politics is that it's also situated on normative ideals. And politics has an ideal, an image that's associated with who deserves respect and who doesn't deserve respect. Who is the criminal? Who is the citizen? Who is the taxpayer? Who is the welfare state? Who is and who isn't? So in group, out group, and so respectability politics is about more so about people pushing themselves to the dominant norm. We currently live in a society that the dominant norm is white society. And so whatever white society deems as acceptable, that is what's respected through their perspective and paradigm. So respectability politics in a grand scheme for me and understanding is that athletes, Black athletes need to comport themselves to be just that. There's no duality. There is no activist athlete. You are the performer. You are labor, and that is the dominant perception. So so in terms of anywhere in society, that is what's happening. There, anyone can walk in any space, and there's a dominant norm that's happening in the interview. When we have to wear a certain idea, we have to have a certain hair. We can't have dreads. Tattoos need to go away. Earrings, piercings, because those things signal for white society that there's something different about whatever mainstream America is. And I'm saying, and I say that and make it racial, and I say white society because white society can also have those things, and they can still garnish the same respect by being white. And so whiteness operates as a property in this paradigm in terms of respectability politics.
And certainly for centuries, we've tried to dress right, speak right, learn right, do right,
Read right, speak right,
read
look
right,
right.
speak the King's English. Du Bois talks about the talented tenth, and so this issue, this had I guess I was just so drawn to it last year and I walked down the street often with it just to get people's comments, just to remind us that we've been through the various masks and costumes we put on to try to not be shot. It's really incredible. Let's jump to the sports issue for a second, and we can spend some time because your academic interests, your personal interests, the time that you spent for the last 15, 20 years has been on various athletic fields, interacting with athletes. And I guess I want to kind of set it up by saying, folks know that Jackie Robinson, the FBI started creating a file on him even before he joined the Dodgers. So as soon as Ricky signed the contract, the FBI started a file on him, and I'll send you the link where it's been a redacted file, but you can see the times that they the surveillance on Robinson, where he went, where he spoke, and this was when he, in Montreal with the minor league team, and before he even came to the Dodgers, because they saw how outspoken he was, and people forget about his court martial when he was in the Army, and people forget about his also being an all-star athlete, an all-American athlete in football. But yeah, so the FBI file on Jackie Robinson, I'll send that to you as a link, and it's really just so fascinating to read. At that time, there was a New Haven FBI office, and there's a citation there about New Haven. Just as an aside, although we didn't have the Freddie Fixer this year, Jackie Robinson and his wife were kind of the.
We are having our own Freddie Fixer right now.
Is it going to be virtual or is it in the fall?
They're walking. They're walking everywhere. They're having. I mean, honestly, some people are walking to the green, but the Freddie Fixer stopped before at Broadway now.
So, no, you're saying that we are going to hold this year's Freddie Fixer?
No, the idea that we're able to walk
Oh,
and to express and to celebrate and to exercise our voices. And so what the Freddie Fixer is symbolic of for some people is the ability to be able to walk around your community and celebrate some of these successes. And obviously we're doing it sometimes in a poor moment, but we are realizing that this collective thing that we haven't had the same number of people the same we had at Freddie Fixer for for
okay.
for a collective idea.
Indeed, indeed. Let's kind of save that for the end of the discussion, maybe even our next discussion, because I posted on Facebook that in some ways this could be, as you know, 2 weeks ago was the Pentecost kind of, if you go through a standard Christian kind of calendar, was the Pentecost weekend. And I've suggested to people that in some ways the spirit of Pentecost has kind of infected a lot of folks globally. Also, your devil spirit has been infected. But yeah, we'll talk about cosmology and astrology and religion, and what does this moment mean in terms of our existential crisis, perhaps at the end, if not in the future. But the point I was trying to make was that with we have one of our famed athletes who was profiled because they did not consider him to be respectable enough, in spite of his complying with the norms and getting called the N-word, and other teams not wanting to play against him. And then if you just fast forward to obviously Tommy Smith and John, what's John's last name? They're both in the 220 with the fist raised. Tommy Smith and
Curry.
pardon?
I guess Curry.
No, not John Curry. John, he was even here in New Haven. But anyway, for them, if we could just if they could get a penny for the first ones to raise a fist, and everybody's raising their fists when they were in the Olympics, John Carlos and Tommy Smith. So yeah, let's talk about from Jackie to John Carlos and Tommy Smith to Colin Kaepernick.
You start with Jackie Robinson. You can go back to Paul Roberson. You can go back to Jesse Owens. I think the second Jesse Owens won the gold, and Jackie Robinson's brother won second.
Right.
So I am always questioned, not say question, but also I'm very interesting about the idea of what was his brother's inspiration in the work that he did.
Mm-hmm.
His brother was a high talented sprinter,
Right.
and have your brother then become to break the color barriers. Sport in itself was originally created to address global dominance, and that was our Athens, that was our Olympics, and that is still the same expression. As Black folks have become more successful in athletics, it has also been a way of being accepted in white society, but it's also been a way to gain economic wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is the point where we are right now. There has been athletic activism in between, because again, as sport as a political space for African Americans their presence was a political expression about readdressing the context of sport, that is just not about global dominance. This turned into entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
So in that same form of entertainment, we were accepted into white society, and we were trying to garnish acceptance, but also gaining resources. In today's athlete, for the most part, we have not removed ourselves from that same point. If we go to, I think last week, after Roger Goodell made a statement, the high-profile athletes that were in the league now made a statement saying, we stand with Black Lives Matter, but specifically these were the premier franchise athletes. I was on a call maybe a couple of days ago, and there wasn't one of my colleagues who played professional football. He makes a statement saying that he was never in a position as a non-drafted athlete to take the same level of stance. So it really challenges the idea of what athletics is, and it doesn't exist in each individual does not have the same level of social capital or social power to have an opinion about certain topics. So we will see the Drew Brees and we will see the LeBron James. Um, and then when you compare the public perception of what these opinions are to some degree, we see that Donald Trump is okay. He said that Drew Brees should have never apologized. He was right on his stance. And you have other individuals that said that LeBron James should shut up and dribble. So it really presses the idea, and me in the athletic space and the work that I do, and again, most of my work is about student athlete holistic development at the high school level. Really giving them the opportunity to make meaning about what their participation is, but also what is their athletic and racial identity, because there's at a point in life that they're synonymous, because you're black and you should play, or you're big and strong and you should play. Not you're big and strong and you should be in the chess club or debate club. You are specifically made and built for this institution. I need to kind of, you should seek this out. And so some of that stuff comes in where some kids innately play sport because it's somewhere a part of their racial identity. And so I do a lot of exploration in dealing with that. But one of the fundamental ideas, and I think Dr. William Roden talks about it in $40 Million Slave,
Mm-hmm.
is about, if you know that you're walking into a system that's going to exploit you, do you still have the same meaning about your participation? How does it impact you personally? And how do you then garnish other people to kind of participate in that same cycle? And so that's what a lot of my work is situated on, the intersectionality of class, race, and I'm starting to work into stuff context of gender. But also race is a fundamental idea of sport. And many of our students don't recognize that. And it's almost interesting to understand how a high school athlete that just lost his season due to COVID recognizes what Kyle Kaepernick's stance was, recognizing what the impact of these NFL players is going to be. Are they going to lock out or going to do a sit out based on police brutality? And how does that make them think about, should I really be fighting for the scholarship to go to this institution that's then going to do the same thing to me?
Let's kind of, as we wind up, let's talk a little bit about, because you've had two or three, I'll call them educational leadership conferences, including the body, mind, spirit, athletic kind of component. Let's talk about some of the conferences you've had, some of your upcoming conferences, and your venture. This is as we talked about before. To me, it's an entrepreneurial venture, and it's a business and it's a product, but it's also a community service that's needed in so many ways.
We've secured, well, hopefully we have a meeting on Monday, and hopefully we've secured our nonprofit status. But we have done two, we call them leadership athletic combines. So we take the combine model of athletic metrics, like the 40 agility drills, and we combine that with a athletic camp, the concept of going out to camps, position drills, coaches coaching up one-to-one in group settings. And then we offer a leadership conference, which is more academic. It's talking to you about what does it mean to be an athlete, talking about the interpersonal skills, talking about the soft skills, bringing leadership coaches in and some kind of leaders in the industry of business and entrepreneurship to talk to the kids about, how do you see yourself outside of sport? How do you merge these different identities within your sport participation? And then what are you trying to garnish from sport? And so really thinking very holistically about that experience. And it's been success. We've had 150 kids each event. We've done football and basketball. COVID did kind of derail some things. But because we are in a kind of a Zoom setting, virtual setting, interacting with kids and asking those, because really the program really is about getting their opinion about their sport participation to better support them in ways that help them mentally and more so mentally in dealing with the journey, because many of them that have not gone through it, it's a long path from your middle school AAU team and your high school AAU team to pros, and it still continues. The lessons that you've learned through sport, if someone teaches it to you the right way, that it can go into your professional life. It can go into your relationships. It can go into your fatherhood, your motherhood. And so being able to give them those tools at an early level and think very critically about their sport participation, think about their individual power. So we
Mhm.
think about the Mizzou football program, and the Mizzou football program was one that was able, I think, to get their, I don't know if it was the president, I think it was the president to step down, or the athletic director step down, and it was about their collective power.
At the
And
University of Missouri.
Missouri, yes.
Mhm.
And so it, political activism can happen anywhere. Having the opportunity to address issues that feel so pressing in your heart, and also being able to be valued without needing allyship is
Mhm.
an important thing. Or again, without sport. And so we see sport as a space where your captain of your Power Five program makes an opinion, and if he has the collective respect of his team, then it's respected. If he wasn't an athlete, then maybe his opinion may be thrown away. Does he need to be the campus president? I think about the undergrad at Yale. What's his name? I was at Kayla. I think it's Kayla, and he's the undergrad president, and he has a platform. But without that, does Black students have an opinion on those campuses? And so that becomes larger issues. Obviously, sport is a space that I work in. I'm very familiar with it. I'm also all about Pablo Ferreri's work about the banking concept and educational equity, cultural competency. So I think when we have this kind of larger question about systemic racism, I think there's other spaces that it operates in. I think right now we're at a point where this is where our physical death happens. Our mental death happens in other spaces. Our spiritual death happens in other spaces.
Mhm.
And so we are all called to action, because the physical death is the first one that we most notice, that we notice first.
Right. And as we conclude, because I want to kind of take up the existential streams that you mentioned at our next conversation. So you're committed for to come back in 2 weeks. But on your right, I want you to refer to you have the poster on your right, I believe. Then you have the two signs here: the no whining and the winners. The poster here of the exercises.
Yeah.
And then the two signs. Let's kind of conclude with why that's important, because regardless of how one sees his or her participation in the struggle or even avoidance of the struggle, to stay healthy enough during these times is really going to be it's really a challenge, regardless of how old or how young or even what your current health condition is. So I'm urging everybody, even if you want to just stay in quarantine for the rest of your life, to stay healthy, you might have to exercise at home. You might have to decide to eat the right stuff. You might have to do some meditation. You might have to do some extra. You may have to do something to keep your vessel pure, even if you want to become a hermit, because these times are not going to get any easier in some ways. So maybe as we conclude, just on a practical level, maybe refer to some of the exercises here and these two mantras and affirmations that I presume are kind of guide you each day.
You want me to answer that?
Yes.
That was a lot.
I guess as we conclude, just to kind of reference about why exercise has a lot here. You have the sign, you have the two affirmations here.
So obviously I have an exercise science background and sports management, but it becomes important on a singular level, is that exercising aerobic and anaerobic is about building muscle, and it's about the circulation of oxygen. And so being able to do the work that we do and having the capacity to do the work that we do, it requires that. Um, we at William & Mary, they talk about building your armor. You
Indeed.
don't really know what you're going to battle for, but it talks about building your armor.
That's right.
And it requires different aspects that you can rely on. And so your physical understanding helps your mental understanding. Your hardest workout give you a mental capacity, because you realize what you kind of conceptualize in your mind what pain feels like.
Mm-hmm.
So working out, pushing your limits is a safe and easy way. And I say safe from my perspective, that it's a safe and easy way to always push your limits.
Mm-hmm.
It's then about taking that same idea and concept and pushing your other limits in other spaces, professionally, in your relationships, and in the activism and community work you want to do, because it's going to require a different level of endurance. It's not about doing 50 or 30 reps and increasing the weight. It's about, there's going to be adversity. There's going to be adversity. There's going to be no's. There's going to be doors that are going to close in your face. And the question is that, do you have the mental capacity to continue that? And so for me, my training has always taught me to go back to your hardest workout. Where's the hardest space you've ever been? And it's personal, because you are there to motivate and will yourself through these workouts. And then you have to come out in society once you fortified yourself to then interact with other individuals and try to implement the same things you want to do. And so I always press on people that fitness is the greatest thing. Working on a book called the Lifter's Diary, which kind of is the same thing. Lifter's Diary. And the Lifter's Diary is those day-to-day mantras that we go into the gym, and we have these different ideas about stripping down, about confronting fear, challenging our limits, establishing our limits. And so these are sometimes programming ideas. These are sometimes you're maxing out that day. This is a day of I don't like what my body looks like, and so I need to confront where I am and where I want to get. And so it deals with the mental and sometimes the spiritual aspect of training. And then it gives you life metaphors that kind of articulate those same things, so that you're able to look at work and look at life differently. But there is connectivity. So there is the synergy of what I'm doing has purpose, and has purpose for what I'm going to do tomorrow. And so that's why it becomes the holistic thing, the idea that the ancestors are in us and we're through us, and the mantras, the logos, and the symbology expressed to us, that it's about really fine tuning our personal vessel so that we can be the light that we want to be.
Perfect. That's I'm going to give you, that's the last word, but your second last word is just, what is this? No whining here?
No, it says no whining.
All right. And then this one down here?
It says losers train and losers complain. In between that is the Indian prayer of great spirit.
Great. So thank you so much. We're going to talk about those and just get no whining, folks, and stay healthy. I know that you've inspired some people that will hear this. We're going to share this out widely, and I just hope that you might have time in two or 3 weeks to kind of reconvene. And if there's one or two of your partners that want to kind of come on board. The name of your company again is?
Athlete Alliance Sports Consulting, and right now we are in the process of establishing a nonprofit, which would be Athlete Alliance Foundation. And
hopefully we might see a reemergence in the fall, perhaps.
Hopefully, COVID willing.
Well, or virtual, we just make it happen. Make it happen. Thanks so much, Donald McAulay Jr. This is the Medium Conversation with Donald McAulay Jr., and we look forward to doing it again.
Thank you.
Take care, man. We didn't touch upon fatherhood, but we'll do that. That's 24/7, 365. So we'll get that in next time.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, man.
You too.